Welcome back to the deep dive. If the phrases organizational framework and regulatory adherence make you want to run for the nearest coffee machine, maybe just stay right where you are.
Please do.
Because today we are diving deep into governance, risk management, and compliance. GRC.
GRC is one of those subjects that, yeah, it sounds incredibly dry, like it's just mandatory paperwork.
Right.
But it is, and I'm not using hyperbole here, it's the strategic engine that runs all of modern security.
Right.
If you ignore it, your tech stack, I don't care how expensive it is,
Yeah.
it just becomes a brittle, non-compliant mess.
Exactly. And we've pulled together a whole stack of sources for this, including a really detailed blueprint for cybersecurity strategy. Now, it was aimed at manufacturing, but honestly, it offers a roadmap for pretty much any complex organization.
It really does.
So our mission today is to give you that shortcut. We want to pull out the non-negotiable foundations of GRC and show you how they turn abstract policies into real, measurable business resilience. Okay, let's unpack this. If we're talking about securing access and data in some huge, sprawling organization, identity governance, access management, what is the absolute non-negotiable foundation?
Well, that's the key question.
We often assume it's the technology, right? The software that locks everything down.
And that assumption is precisely where most organizations get it wrong. Our sources make this crystal clear. No company can achieve effective access compliance. And by that, I mean really knowing who has access to what and being able to prove it without having robust governance and risk management frameworks already in place.
So the tool itself isn't enough?
Not even close. The best tool in the world will fail if it's operating in, well, a strategic vacuum.
But why? I mean, why isn't a top-tier piece of identity software enough on its own?
Because the problem isn't fundamentally technical. It's cultural and it's operational. The essential prerequisite for success isn't installing a new tool.
Okay.
It's fostering a pervasive, security-minded culture inside the organization. If the people making decisions about new apps, new hires, new vendors, if they aren't thinking about risk from the get-go, the tools will just be, circumvented or configured improperly.
That's a really powerful distinction. So GRC isn't just a layer you put around the technology. It actually dictates how the business runs.
It does more than dictate. It actively shapes three critical areas.
Okay.
First, it defines organizational operations, how teams work together, where data is even allowed to flow. Second, it dictates your data management practices. So how data is classified, stored, and eventually retired.
And the third?
And this one is critical. It defines the decision-making process for access control. Who gets access to the server farm, why they need it, and, just as important, how quickly that access is revoked when their role changes.
Right. If GRC is missing, that's when you get what our sources call permission sprawl.
Permission sprawl. I love that term. That's exactly it. Where every employee ends up with way more access than they actually need for their job.
And nobody knows why.
Nobody knows why.
Right.
And it usually happens because the tech team doesn't have a consistent, governed policy framework for management. So they're forced to just grant quick, broad access to keep the business moving.
So the big takeaway here is that culture is what determines compliance, and GRC is what defines the structures that let that compliant culture actually function.
Perfectly put.
So if culture is the foundational mindset, let's talk about the first real structural component we lay down. That brings us right to policy and compliance management. This sounds like the bureaucratic part, but it's essential.
It is the rules engine.
Right.
I mean, to effectively enforce an organization's rules, you have to establish the correct formal processes for authorization.
Otherwise, it's all just suggestions.
Yeah, exactly. It's just best effort attempts,
That's
which
right.
they always fail under pressure.
And our source material, it identifies some very specific practical actions this capability addresses. The first one is assisting in crafting and implementing specific authorization models. That's where the rubber really meets the road, isn't it?
It is, and this is where it can get really complex. An authorization model means translating these fluid, real-world job responsibilities into rigid technical permissions.
Like role-based access control, RBAC.
Right. Think about RBAC. If you don't have robust GRC, that RBAC model is going to break almost instantly because job roles change way faster than the permission system can keep up.
Ah, okay.
So GRC provides a mechanism to audit, to review, and to update those models constantly.
So it's not a one-time setup. It's continuous maintenance to stop those access models from sort of rotting over time.
Exactly. And second, policy management means creating flexible governance processes that comply with regulatory requirements. And that word flexible is so important.
Why flex?
Because regulations like GDPR, IPIA or ISO standards. They don't exist in a vacuum. They have to interact with your operational reality. A good GRC framework lets you adapt to a new regulation without grinding the entire business to a halt.
That feels like the most common complaint we hear, that compliance just slows everything down. A flexible process makes sure it's a guardrail, not a roadblock.
It has to be. And the third practical component is developing solutions specifically centered around governing GRC itself.
Governing the governance.
Yes, and this is where people sometimes get a little confused.
What does that look like on the ground?
It means auditing the auditors. It means making sure that your internal compliance team's processes are efficient, transparent, and that they themselves are compliant with your stated goals.
So you're not just checking if the staff followed the rules.
No, you're checking if the rules themselves are still the right ones and if the team is enforcing them correctly. It's basically continuous quality control for your whole regulatory strategy.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so we've established the rules, but rules are only as strong as our understanding of what might break them. And that shifts our focus from structured rules to threats, both external and internal, cyber risk management.
Right. Grasping the risks that affect your organization isn't just a technical exercise. It is absolutely crucial for the success of your entire GRC effort.
Because that's how you decide where to put your resources.
That's it. Risk analysis dictates where you allocate your budget and your people. If you analyze risk poorly, you'll spend millions on threats that don't really matter and completely ignore the ones that do.
What's fascinating here is that the blueprint we looked at insists that this risk identification process has a dual target. It's not just about what's happening inside your own company's four walls.
No, not at all. When we talk about the threat surface, we have to pinpoint risks tied to both internal operations.
So employee errors, things like that.
Employee errors, configuration drift, technology failures, you name it, and external vendors. This is the great modern vulnerability.
The supply chain.
Every cloud service, every outsourced HR system, every single specialized manufacturer you work with, they all represent an external threat surface.
It's like inviting 10 guests over to your house and just having to trust that they all have perfect security practices on their own laptops.
It's exactly like that, but with your most critical data. A robust GRC framework forces you to assess your vendor's own GRC posture. You have to know if that third-party provider managing your payroll data has a proper business continuity plan.
And if their access controls meet your standards.
Exactly. If they don't, that vulnerability is now yours.
So GRC has to extend past the legal contract and into the actual operational reality of the vendor. And once those risks, internal and external, are identified and mapped out, then you get to the strategic plan.
Right, and the strategic plan must involve a strategy for rolling out the necessary technology and procedures to bolster those risk management activities at a much larger scale.
Scale is critical here.
It is. If your risk assessment system can't handle onboarding 50 new suppliers, or opening a new regional office without just collapsing under the weight, then it's not a true enterprise GRC system.
I want to challenge that point a little bit. Doesn't the sheer complexity of integrating all those different vendor systems and internal apps just create more risk? Where do the sources address the governance headache of, tool overload?
That's a huge point and a really important one. The risk strategy has to prioritize integration over the sheer number of tools. The headache comes from siloed systems. A strong GRC strategy integrates risk data from across the entire organization. So the person managing compliance sees the same risk score for a server vulnerability as the person managing IT operations.
A unified view.
A unified view. And it mitigates that risk of different departments making security decisions based on incomplete or, worse, conflicting information.
Okay, let's pivot to the defensive posture. We've talked about the rules. We've talked about identifying the threats. The necessary next step is preparing for the inevitability of failure.
Yeah.
What happens when a disaster actually strikes? We need resilience, and that's business continuity.
This is where GRC moves from a theoretical strategy to, frankly, physical survival. This capability ensures the business has the systems and processes to not only remain functional during a crisis,
And that could be anything, a fire, a flood.
a ransomware attack, but also to bounce back effectively afterwards.
And the crucial distinction here, which is so often missed, is the difference between disaster recovery and business continuity.
Yes.
DR is about restoring IT systems, but BC is about restoring business operations.
That's absolutely right. Disaster recovery is technical, business continuity is operational and regulatory, and the steps here are very concrete. It means guiding the organization in formulating the business continuity plan, the BCP. That's the physical document, the strategy for all the non-IT elements.
And crucially, that BCP has to make sure that GRC rules are still followed even in the middle of chaos. Like who gets emergency admin access to critical
You
systems?
can't just throw the rule book out the window to recover from a
Right.
breach.
No.
Precisely. And that requires guaranteeing the deployment of suitable technology to implement that BCP effectively during an emergency. A plan on a piece of paper that says only the VP of Finance can authorize payments is useless if, during the recovery, the system just defaults to giving every recovering account temporary admin rights.
The tech has to enforce the plan.
The technology must enforce the BCP's GRC requirements even when the primary system is down.
So we've laid out the three pillars: policy and compliance, cyber risk management, and business continuity. It's this integrated strategic loop. Now let's zoom out to the high-level payoff. If you actually do this, if you successfully integrate GRC, what are the key benefits a learner should expect?
Well, what's fascinating is that because the GRC environment continuously shifts, new tech, new laws, new threats, the benefits aren't static. The strategy itself has to be dynamic to stay ahead of all these emerging trends.
So what are the measurable gains?
First, the ability to detect, control, and rank both internal business risks and those external vendor risks we talked about. And ranking them is key
Why?
because it lets leaders prioritize spending and effort where the risk to the business is actually highest. It turns security from just a cost center into a genuine strategic investment.
So instead of spending equally on every little risk, you prioritize the one that could actually shut the business down.
Precisely. Second, you ensure adherence to regulations through comprehensive security solutions that are seamlessly integrated. That seamless part is what prevents audit fatigue and wasted effort.
Right.
If your GRC is robust, preparing for an audit should be the click of a button, not a month-long scramble to pull reports from 5 different siloed systems.
And this framework, it also provides essential introspection. It's not just about defending against the outside, but also finding and fixing your own internal weaknesses.
Yes, a good GRC framework actively helps you pinpoint specific vulnerabilities within your existing GRC framework itself. Are policies too vague? Is our authorization model too lax? You're constantly governing the governance
Driving continuous improvement.
instead of just reacting to failures.
And finally, these efforts, they get specialized support. GRC is not a project you can just tackle alone.
No way. High-level GRC projects often need assistance and training for adopting new solutions and integrating systems. Specialization helps bridge that inevitable skills gap when you're dealing with complex regulatory changes or brand new access technologies.
That really brings those abstract benefits down to earth, and we can see the success reflected in the real-world scenarios our sources highlighted. The complexity of GRC means the solution has to be tailored.
The examples are great for showing that adaptability. Take the lawyer agency LLP. For them, GRC success was all about client trust and avoiding punitive regulatory fines.
Makes sense.
They used GRC to identify and mitigate risks tied specifically to accessing highly sensitive client communications and financial data. They had to ensure their legal standing wasn't compromised by a data breach.
Which is a very different world from a manufacturing environment. Let's think about the manufacturing company example. They strengthen their security posture through strategic risk management.
For a manufacturer, GRC often means securely managing the convergence of operational technology, the OT systems on the factory floor that control machinery, with traditional IT systems.
The IT-OT convergence.
Exactly. The GRC process identified risks with legacy OT devices that IT security had previously just ignored, allowing the company to ensure production continuity while still maintaining a secure environment.
And finally, the technology company. They benefited immensely. They weren't fighting legacy issues so much as dealing with just massive, rapid scale.
They needed speed and compliance at the same time. They highlighted getting practical, down-to-earth solutions that took the time to address their unique tech challenges.
Like what?
Like ensuring that the rapid deployment of new software and new cloud environments remain compliant from day one. That level of tailoring just reinforces the idea that GRC is a strategy, not an off-the-shelf product.
So to synthesize this entire discussion for you, GRC is really the umbrella that provides organizational resilience.
That's right. We've looked at policy and compliance management, which sets the enforceable rules. We looked at cyber risk management, which identifies, ranks, and strategizes against threats. And business continuity, which prepares for and executes your operational recovery.
And GRC is what connects all three.
It connects all three into a single, cohesive, business-driven strategy.
So what does this all mean? It means GRC isn't just an IT checklist or some mandatory compliance hurdle. It is the operational framework that converts your technical security tools into measurable business resilience. It protects the bottom line.
And it lets the C-suite translate these really complex security discussions into risk conversations they can understand and act on immediately.
Absolutely. So our sources emphasize that GRC systems shape operations, data management, and access control decision-making AA&D, that ultimate success hinges on fostering a security-minded culture. So here's the final thought. If the GRC environment is always shifting and evolving, which we know it is, how does an organization continually integrate new solutions to maintain that foundational, non-technical cultural mindset?
There's the challenge.
When does technology support the culture, and when does it start to undermine it? That's something to mull over as you explore the field further.